This is Ryan Finkelstein, host of Locked On Mets, and on today's show, I was joined by Mets beat writer Justin Toscano to talk about some of the Mets struggles right now and what it's been like behind the scenes.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Mets fans, happy to be joined by Justin Toscano, my first guest on YouTube. I think you might have been my first, maybe my second guest on the podcast. So happy you could kind of christen this vessel here on YouTube, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at this little portal we've got here. I don't even know what to call it, but it's a nice setup, nice little broadcast, nice production elements. So it's good to be here. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Professional, man. That's what I am here. So I wanted to talk to you about everything going on with the Mets. Obviously, it's a rough stretch, but your most recent piece was an interview with Rich Hill, and he talked about the work and how that is what's going to produce the results. Pete Alonso, kind of a similar sentiment where he was talking to you guys, and he said, you know, this is just a bad week on the job. What is it like when you're a little bit closer to the team and you can see that this is their job, and as much as they're frustrated with their struggles, this is part of their day-to-day, and they probably don't get as high or as low as the people who are watching the team?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I certainly empathize more with them than the average fan does, and that's nothing against the average fan. It's just that, look, the average fan wants to come home from work, sit down, watch the game, and watch the Mets score 10 runs and blow up the opposing starting pitcher. And I get it. Like, I totally get it. Sports are an escape for people. Mets fans are rabid. They're passionate. They always will be, and that's a good thing. You would rather have passion than over indifference. But I think I empathize a little more because I see a little more of what goes in. Like, those guys are there every day, hours before the game. They're working in the cage. They're, doing BP. They're talking, to the hitting coaches on the iPads, and they're doing their studying. Like, on today's off day, they'll study, the pitchers for the upcoming series. So there's so much work that goes into it that I understand why fans don't care about the quote unquote process. But I think, whether, like, Rich Hill's seen it all, and that's why I wanted to ask him a couple questions like that, because I do think there's something to that. Like, in life, I don't think things, sometimes things don't go well at people's jobs, but like Pete Alonso was saying, you have to stick to the process. Like, sometimes the process is correct and you put in all the effort and you have a great attitude and the results just don't come, and like, that's okay. But it doesn't mean you can totally ditch the process. Like, you have to believe in what you're doing. If this team didn't believe in the process, the results would be even worse than they are now. I think they're going through something really rough, something really wicked. And I get that. Look, like, fans don't care about the process. Like, they just don't. Like, they want results, and that's okay. But I think covering them, I empathize a little more with how difficult it must be to go through an 162 game season. The guys on the other side, I know it sounds like an excuse every time Mets players use it, but they drive nice cars too. And that's true. Like, you can't even walk through the bullpen door anymore unless you're throwing at least 97. And so it's like, these guys, they're not bad. It's just a constant cat and mouse game to get ahead of the opponent. And look, they've been awful on fastballs. They've been awful offensively in different facets all year. Like, it's been like this for most of the year, except for a 2-week stretch. But on the other hand, yeah, you kind of feel bad for them because you can tell, they try to keep a cool head, but you can tell they just don't have many answers, and they have to stick to that process. And then, like Rich Hill said, it just goes back to doing the work. You can't abandon what got you there. You have to do the work every single day. And I think, like, I understand why fans just want results, but I think if fans maybe like looked a little inward and like at the jobs they did, like, it's the same deal. Like, you have that routine. You have to stick to the process. You have to to be good at something, you have to fall in love with the process and not be attached to the outcome. I think that's very important. And I think, like, covering the team, being a little closer, you see that a little more, that these guys, like, they're not working any less hard than they did, like, at least from my perspective. Did they look like they had a lot of energy this weekend in Philly? No. Like, that was probably the most lifeless I've seen this team all season. And I think anybody watching the team would say the same thing. They didn't look confident. They didn't look, as no matter what they say, they just look lifeless. And that's not, that might just be the circumstances getting to them, but I don't think they're working any less hard. So I think you just try to, being closer to them, you just try to talk to the Rich Hills of the world and ask those questions, because like, you empathize, you try to see what they're dealing with, because I don't know how it feels to go through an 162 game season. I show up to work every day, but the competition level that I face and that they face, they're just much different things. And I get like, everybody has tough days at work and then bad weeks at work, bad years at work, even. Like, I mean, that's life. So I think you kind of try to put it into the human perspective. But I do understand on the other side, like, fans don't care about the process, or like, they don't want to hear that. They just want the results. And I totally get that as well. But an interesting thing, not to ramble, that Rich Hill told me was that whenever he buys a ticket for something, whether it's like a play, a baseball game, a concert, he wants to see the effort. Like, he's paying to see like the effort. And he said that the Mets need to put in the work because, like, of course they're doing it for themselves. They want to extend their careers, but they need to put in the work because the people paying to see the games and the people who are supporting them want to see that effort. And that's why the routine and the process and the effort is so important.
Well, a couple things I take from that. For one, don't sell yourself short. The Mets beat is very competitive. Okay, you got a very competitive environment there. A lot of people trying to get those stories. So don't sell yourself short. But also, I think that you talk about the work, and I think even a perfect example as we do this YouTube show here. I promise you, in 3 weeks, my YouTube show will be a lot better than it is my first week. It definitely takes time as a process. But at the same time, the Mets have been at this all year. And as much as Pete Alonso says, trust us, we'll be fine, all year long, the Mets offense has been bad. I mean, this is not something new. And the cast of characters has changed. But overall, outside of the beginning of July, this has not been a good offensive team.
Right. And I think it's like one other thing Rich Hill told me that was actually like before the game, but it applied. It's almost that well done is better than well said. And I think you can say, trust me, trust us all you want. But at the end of the day, it's almost like, a boyfriend or a girlfriend saying that in a relationship repeatedly. You have to put in the work to be trusted, like that's a weird analogy, but that's how I see it, is that fans are always going to be passionate. Like, the Mets are lucky that their fans have shown through years and years and years of pain and heartbreak and just messes and weird situations that they're still going to be there. But you have to, Pete Alonso can say, trust us. That's okay. But the Mets should also be okay with the fans not completely trusting them until they put together a couple of these offensive performances. It's been this way all season. I think, obviously they had the I don't even want to say excuse, because it was a real thing, just the situation with all the injuries. But, but before, it was just the runners in scoring position. In Philly, it was just the fact that they couldn't create many situations at all. Maybe they couldn't that first game, but the second and the third games were about as bad as this offense has looked all year. Probably, I think of the games I remember, they looked awful against Boston in that first game, or the first or the second one of those games at home, and then these two games. I mean, otherwise, it's like the issues all year have been with runners in scoring position. They look like world beaters, and then when they get the guys they bases loaded, they shrivel again. And it's kind of weird, because then it completely flipped to these last couple games. They didn't have much going at all. You take away the back-to-back home runs off a young guy, and they get shut out twice to end the series. And then, if you wouldn't have had those back-to-back home runs, this team scores 16 runs over the 7-game road trip. I mean, I'm not a math major, but that's not good. And like, I think you try to empathize with them. You try to see, like, this team does have talent. They are working hard. There's a lot of confidence in that clubhouse for sure. A lot of leadership there. You don't want them to panic, obviously. Like, I don't think that's good. Fans who want them to panic, like, I never think panic is good. But like James McCann said, you need to have that sense of urgency. Eventually, if you keep saying we'll get them tomorrow, like he said, and he's right. It's going to be the middle of September, and it's going to be too late. And I think for me, the concerning part about this team right now is not so much that they can't turn it around. I think they can, but they put themselves in an awful situation considering they have 13 against the Giants and the Dodgers coming up. And I think that is where the concern comes from more than the team being bad. I don't think this is a bad team. I think they can turn it around, to some degree. I just think that, now if they want to turn it around, they're really going to have to walk the walk against good teams.
We will have more with Justin Toscano in just a minute, but first I want to tell you about BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. If you want to do some live betting during a Mets game, if you want to bet before the game on Pete Alonso to hit a home run, BetOnline has you covered. They even have awards TV shows and reality TV with real-time updated odds and props on almost anything you could imagine. BetOnline has you covered for all the news, scores, and odds. It's the best way to place your bets, and it's free to sign up. So head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with our promo code LOCKEDON. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON to receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Yeah, and I think that as the schedule gets harder and also you have less games to play with, every single series matters, and you can't be dropping 3 or 4 to the Marlins and then get swept by the Phillies and expect there not to be some questions raised about how you can get better. And I think a lot of times fans are always pointing towards what can the front office do? Who's in the minors that can come up? And you see someone like Carlos Rincon in Double-A tearing the cover off the ball, and you think, okay, bring him up. But is Carlos Rincon going to start over Michael Conforto, Brandon Nimmo, or Dominic Smith? Most likely not. And the one thing that is a little bit concerning is, there was so much of a stress put on the clubhouse camaraderie and what that meant to the Mets. But also you have to wonder if that can get in the way of maybe making a better decision for your roster. So for an example, Kevin Pillar has been bad for months now. And I'm not saying that the Mets should absolutely get rid of him. I don't think they would. He's a leader on the team. He's a big, important part of what they do on a day-to-day basis. But when you're looking at the playing time he gets and the fact that he's been, he hasn't, at least the last time I checked, he hadn't drawn a walk since the end of June. So he's just not a good at bat right now. How do you get over, or how do you contemplate with what a player's bringing behind the scenes to what they're bringing to you on the field?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that's the delicate balance. Kevin Pillar is somebody, I think you kind of take it contextually, right? I think earlier in the season, like in early May, Luis Rojas was giving him playing time and said, and he hadn't really had the results. And Luis Rojas explained it with, well, we believe, the BABIP is there. He's been hitting the ball hard, so the exit velocity is there, the expected batting average. Like, we just believe it's going to turn. And I remember in that Philly series, Pillar had a couple home runs. In fact, I think he had a home run that night. Since he came back from the injured list, though, after getting hit in the face with a pitch, he hasn't been good. And I think it's tough because that clubhouse culture, it works both ways. I think, like, guys, obviously guys are leaders, but you have to, like, if you're not playing well, you have to also accept a role change. And I think all of them publicly have talked about how they knew when they signed here that it was going to be a group effort and that there was going to be no one guy stealing the show, and that they signed here because of that, because they wanted to win. So if that's truly the case, then I think you have to be okay with, like, the opposite end of it is if your playing time, decreases or whatnot. But I think if you're the front office, I mean, it's a tough decision. They definitely weighed clubhouse chemistry pretty hard, but I do think there were, certainly other additions that could have been made that wouldn't have detracted from the clubhouse chemistry. It just would have changed roles here and there. And, like, hey, I mean, you're on a team, and if everybody winning theoretically cures all, and if there's that one guy who isn't happy winning because he's not starring in the show, I mean, that's not being a great teammate. And so I think you balance it with that realism of okay, like, we have to improve the team versus, like, guys have to understand at points. And I think it's tough because you can make there is an argument that Kevin Pillar is playing way too much right now. Like, I do think, I mean, they have Albert Almora, but I mean, they could have made another move at the deadline. I mean, I certainly think if you look how the Braves overhauled their outfield after the Acuna injury, did they make any world-beating moves? No. But I thought they made solid moves there to solidify that outfield. And I think the Mets could have done something similar in at least providing better depth because, yeah, like you said, Kevin Pillar has been great. But it's really, like, all around the roster. I think you see situations of where guys have accepted that. When James McCann wasn't hitting well, he wasn't a bad teammate to Tomas Nido, who was hitting well and started getting more playing time. things like that. I mean, I think it's also shaken out to be a little easier for them this year because those replacements have gotten a lot of time because of all the injuries. But I think now is the time where if you're Luis Rojas in the front office, like last year, he really played the hot hand. And that's something that I was very impressed by down the stretch, that he was able to tell a veteran like Cano, like, you're not going to be playing as much. Or he was able to tell Ahmed Rosario, like, hey, this rookie's just playing better than you. We're going to be starting him. Like, I'm sorry. And I think like we're getting down to that time now in the season where there's going to be something that needs to be done, but it's weird to balance it out with the roster now because the trade deadline's passed. There's no August waiver period anymore, and so you figure like this team is just going to be the team.
Yeah, and you talk about the work that goes into it, and someone who travels with the team, I think you've seen firsthand that as much as we can talk about the Giants and the Dodgers and the schedule and all that stuff, at times this team plays up to their competition as much as they play down to their competition. I was in that series, or I was at that series in Pittsburgh, saw Taijuan Walker throw away all those runs. Then they go to Cincinnati, have a really crazy game and end up winning that series. And then they beat Toronto, two good teams. So what do you think the players, when they're looking at this, or I don't even know if they do look at the schedule the same way as some fans do, but when they get into a series against the Dodgers, they're still expecting to win. And I think maybe at times we overanalyze who they're playing, because you can go to Miami and lose 3 or 4, or you can play the Dodgers and who knows, maybe the Mets get a sweep.
Right. Yeah. I think, we saw it earlier in the year when San Diego, granted they were struggling, but like the Mets looked good against them and looked terrible against other teams. And that was like the Mets weren't even like at full strength back then. And so I think you look at it like that. I mean, I've always felt that this team especially, like the Mets of recent years, plays up and down to competition. And I think like ever since 19, I mean, I think they have the talent to compete with the Dodgers and the Giants. Like, but on the other hand, they might go to Miami and lose 3 or 4. So I think, they don't see it on the schedule. It's not like, I don't think it's like basketball where you see, wow, like these guys are all 6 inches taller than us. I think like they truly believe they can go out and win, especially because, hey, they've got the pieces in the lineup. They've got the rotation. They don't have a bad rotation. DeGrom's not pitching, but they don't have a bad rotation. So they've got the horses there. They've got the pieces in the lineup. And look, like they've done it before. Like they took the Dodgers to the brink in that series, in Citi Field 2 years ago. And it's like baseball is a different game where anything can happen, on any given day. And I think like it's such a long season that, they definitely, I think fans are like, wow, 13 against the Dodgers and the Giants. And I was saying that too, because from a scheduling perspective, it looks concerning with the current state of the team. I've always felt this team can play up to competition or down to competition, but it did concern me how they played in Philly, because they looked bad in Philly. They looked like a bad team in Philly. Like that didn't look like a team that was even close to figuring anything out. At different points of the year, the Mets have seemed like they're close to that offensive breakthrough. In Philly, I think they were as far away from it as they've ever been this season. And you have to credit Philly. They're playing well. So I just don't, I mean, I get why the fans might look at the schedule a lot and are very concerned now, but I don't think players view it that way. I think they truly, like, they don't even say that just publicly. I think they truly believe they can go out and beat the Dodgers in a 7-game series if they were to play one, starting this week, just because that's the way things work. And they're not overmatched by any means. Like the Dodgers are pretty much talent-wise a step ahead of everyone in talent and depth, but I don't think the Mets really feel overmatched to anybody, nor should they, because they do have the talent for sure to hang with these teams. And baseball is a different game where it's not only talent. I mean, different things happen. So I do think, that I wouldn't be surprised if they finished that trip, like only a game under 500 or, even a game over 500, just because I just think, I just really think that they could play up to their competition. I mean, I think that they could really surprise some people and make it interesting. I don't think the season's over by any means.
One reason to repair and maintain your cars is to save money that you can use for other important things like your mortgage or food. So why would you choose to spend 30%, 50%, maybe even 100% more for the exact same auto parts at a chain store or new car dealership? Well, you can just go to rockauto.com, a family business that's been serving auto parts to customers online for 20 years. They have everything you could want, from engine control modules to brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or daily driver, get everything you need and have it delivered in a few easy clicks right to your door. The RockAuto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. You can quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle and then choose the brand specifications and prices you prefer. Go to RockAuto.com right now to see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right locked on in there. How'd you hear about us box? So they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. Yeah, I think when you talk about schedule, this off day is probably huge for the Mets. I mean, the past 2 weeks, I guess you've probably gone through it too, with traveling. It's been a lot of baseball, and I think it probably feels like a lot more baseball when you're playing the way the Mets have played, where it's just a grind every day. So hopefully you would think that a day off can maybe refresh things and they can get back on track and then maybe take advantage of a team like the Nationals at home, where the Mets have been so much better this year.
Right, yeah. And I was trying to think right when you said that. I don't even know, have they even had an off day since they had one after Cincinnati. So that was what, like July 22nd, I think. Yeah, it's been a couple weeks, and I think it's needed. I know it sounded like an excuse, and Pete Alonso said it, but he said, and honestly, like, we've got an off day coming up, and that's going to be big to recharge the batteries mentally and physically. And it is. In a game like baseball where you're playing so many straight games, things just didn't go well on this road trip. Sometimes that reset button is all you need. And it sounds cliche, but I think everybody who's ever worked a job knows you're working 13, 14 days in a row. Like, how are you going to feel after that? It's just like sometimes, and especially when things aren't going well, there's a difference between Luis Rojas telling his team after Friday, hey, just go get some rest. We need to come back tomorrow. Like, just go get some rest, get your mind off it. And then after Saturday, telling them the same thing for Sunday. It's different when you have a full day to do it. Sure, they might study stuff today, but it's different when you can just relax, like barbecue some food, hang out with family. Like, it's different when you get your mind off of those sorts of things, especially in a game like baseball. To me, it has really looked like, and this is tough to analyze, so I'm not even saying this is fact, but it's looked like this team has overthought a lot and sometimes gets in its own head, especially at the plate. And I think something like this can really help. I think an off day like this can really help them kind of regroup, and I think that's what they need. They were 5-6 in their last homestand, but they have played better at home. The Nationals are stripped down. That should be, it shouldn't be a tough series for them if they play well. Then they've got the Dodgers. The place is going to be rocking this weekend, obviously. And so, like, yeah, the off day I think really matters, because in baseball, when you have these stretch runs, I just think it's especially when things go poorly, sometimes there's no way to get out of it. Like, sometimes there's no way to reset day by day. You can talk about flipping the theoretical switch, and you can try your best to do it. But when things just keep spiraling, getting worse, like they did over the road trip, like they went from progressively bad to like worse. And I think this off day really is something that they needed.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't want to bet on the Mets again. I don't know if you know, I'm the reason why I'm clean shaven right now. I gambled the Mets would win 7 of 10 with this stretch. Marlins, Phillies, Nationals. I was confident. Didn't work out for me, so I'm not going to bet that the Mets are going to have a winning record coming through this final stretch. But I do think that there is a pretty solid chance that we're going to see a much better Mets team this week. I mean, it can't be worse, but I think that this could be a week that they turn things around for sure. I want to switch gears, though, a little bit and ask you kind of about how your job has been to go from all the access in the world in 2019 to COVID and what happened last year and having to watch the team from a little bit of afar. What has it been like to finally get that access back, be in the clubhouse a bit, and be able to do your job the way you're kind of supposed to?
Yeah. So we still can't be in the clubhouse, but we can be like there for batting practice on the field and in the dugout. So it's kind of like halfway back to normal. So on one hand, you have the access. On the other, it's not in the clubhouse. So in the clubhouse, you at least knew guys like were in there, and you could, ask them for a few, and maybe they wouldn't be doing anything. But it's like weird. You still do that on the field, but I personally always feel bad because you're kind of taking them away from their routines and their work and stuff. So I try to like balance that. So it's definitely a delicate balance, but it's been nice again, because for like somebody like me, I feel like I'm still like a student of the game. And so part of my job that I feel like is so cool is that I'm around people who are the best in the world at what they do. And so like, I might not even like talk to somebody for a story, but I might just ask them a couple questions about something that I saw in the game. And that's been really beneficial to me, because I've really learned a lot from some of the guys. And so I love that part of it, and just like getting the access again to be able to tell actual stories instead of like getting things over Zoom and having the same things every single day. Has been super nice, super refreshing. I think it makes the job feel a lot more lighthearted. I think last year was only a 60 game season, but it felt like a really long season to cover and to do the job. And this year it feels like it's just flying by. Like I can't believe we're already going to be like in September in a couple weeks. And so, yeah, like I think it's brought a lot of the best parts of the job where we can get that access so we can give fans the very best stories and the very best insight and like really get the nuance and the texture that the Zoom era lacked. And I think that's been great, like not only for us, but, by virtue for fans. And then just for me personally, I think it's been just cool to like reconnect with some of the guys, meet some of the new faces, build some relationships there. And I think like it's easier when you're asking questions over Zoom, they only have the question to go by, if that makes sense. But if you're in person, like I get to tell, like they get to see who I am. So I might, like we might just be talking off the record about, like family stuff or whatever it may be. But it's like they get to see, they know where I'm coming from, that I'm not coming from a place of trying to bury them or trying to, look for a headline or bait them into a soundbite. So I think when they know where you're coming from in general, like I think it, then on the Zooms and everything else, like it starts to work better. So that's been like the nice part about getting the access again, is that people can like, they can see, you can tell people a little bit of like about, you can show them a little bit about what you're about. And I think that's been a really good thing. Cause I think that's something that's beneficial that like fans don't realize. And it goes into telling like better stories and getting more insight and really finding out what goes on with these guys and just like the obvious, like, injuries and things like that, like you can ask them about now. And you're not really at the mercy of who the PR staff wants to put on the Zoom. And that's nothing against Mets PR. I mean, it's like they can't put 50, all players and staff on there every day, but it's like you have more of a free range to talk to people. And I think that's really beneficial because not only has it helped me do better work, but it's helped me learn a lot more, I think, this year than I could last, because I can actually like follow up with people on certain things and like see what people were seeing. And just like, I think it's a lot better. I can't wait for Clubhouse access, but this has been great because it feels like I just love being down there, and I don't really take it for granted because it's so cool to do, but it's been like an awesome time this year because of that. And I feel like the season has just flown by.
I got a 2-part question for you here.
Go.
What is the best part about being on the Mets beat, and why is your answer the ice cream machine at Citi Field?
yeah. I realized what you were going for right when I thought of the ice cream machine. It's got to be the ice cream. I mean, like Miami's got a pretty good one, but they turn it off in the first inning, whereas like Citi Field just keeps running, man. Like I'm pretty sure if like I pitched a tent in there like overnight, like it would still be running. But man, that's the best, like the best on the job perk. Like I always just find myself saying around the third and the fourth inning, well, at least I worked out today because I'm going to be having a couple more of these ice creams. No, man, it's the best. I love that Citi Field ice cream machine. It's always got a soft spot, special place in my heart.
What's the go-to flavor? What, you a swirl guy, chocolate, vanilla? What's your taste?
I'm a vanilla guy. I used to be like, when I would go to like Cold Stone and Baskin Robbins and all those places when I was younger, I used to get strawberry and that was like good and stuff. But I'm a big vanilla guy now because I feel like a good vanilla is not only very tasty, but it's the perfect layer to top it with. So it's like perfect for sprinkles, perfect for like chocolate sauce, you name it, man. Like I don't think like the flavor is still going to be there with the vanilla. It's just like enhanced by, all the toppings you're going to put. So I'm a huge vanilla guy, but I mean, I had some chocolate in Philly and that was good, but man, vanilla all the way.
Are you the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to the beat guys? Are you number one in ice cream consumption?
Oh, I've got to be. Yeah, I've got to be. If you ever have anybody else on here and they try to tell you differently, like that's just a lie. I've got to be. Though I don't think anybody cared about it remotely in the way that I did, which is okay, but I've got to be the leader in the clubhouse in consumption. I don't know if there's like a Fangraphs metric for that now. To my
There
opinion,
should be.
but yeah, no. If they make one up, I'm definitely going to be the league leader among qualified ice cream eaters, in the press box, because I just, oh God, yeah, it's always nice going back home for like a homestand because I just know, there's going to be that comfort of the ice cream machine.
I feel like Tacoma's a sneaky ice cream guy. Like he might not actually eat it in front of you guys, but he's walking to the bathroom and, chowing down on some ice cream real quick.
Maybe, man. He was making fun of me when I was hyped that when Mets PR was like talking about how the ice cream machine was going to be back. I was hyped, of course. And he was like, for all the adults in here, when's the coffee machine going to come back? And I was like, man, so if I catch him doing that, I'm going to really let him have it, because he was making fun of me for being so happy about the ice cream machine.
I think he's sneaky, man. I think he's not telling you. I think behind the scenes, Como is just chowing down on ice cream and not telling anyone about it. He thinks he's too big time to be eating ice cream during the games. But come on, nobody's.
I think that's the first rule of being at those games. Nobody's too big to be eating ice cream at the games. I mean,
that's right.
We've got to respect an American delicacy there.
Well, luckily, anyone's been watching can see your Twitter handle on the page here. But why don't you tell people where they can find your work?
Yeah, northjersey.com. Doesn't cost a lot to subscribe. But yeah, follow on Twitter, follow on there. And yeah, that's where you can find it. I like that Twitter handle. I was seeing that right when I got on. I forgot that's like a little nifty thing. I mean, I can't wait to see how big you do it up the next time I'm on.
And for the podcast listeners, it's Justin C. Toscano on Twitter. Thanks again for joining me today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.